released their memo proves he has something to hide.
Schiff firing back, saying this: Mr. President, what you call political are actually called facts.
I think this memo has to go through a process. I don't think that process should be politicized. We need more adults in this thing.
Officers Eric Joring and Anthony Morelli are gunned down. Joring died at the scene just outside Columbus, Ohio. Morelli died in the hospital.
These two put on a uniform to go out and serve the people of their community. These absolutely are heroes, and people need to understand that.
Olympic update for you.
Sister of Kim Jong-un. She was part of the North Korean delegation to South Korea. CNN says Kim Jong-un's sister stealing the show at the Winter Olympics.
Having, the sister show up and pretend that she's all fun and games doesn't change a thing in North Korea.
Vice President Pence said Saturday there was no daylight between the U.S. and South Korea in their aim to rid the North of its nukes and missiles.
I finally found something I'm good at. I got a poor sense of direction, sometimes too strong of affection.
Isn't that anthem of most of our lives? Just find something that we're good at.
Yes.
Eventually, someday. What are you best at, Rachel?
I love to cook, and I'm actually really good. And the best tacos in Wausau, Wisconsin are in my house.
I believe that. Absolutely. I'm inviting myself to your house for tacos.
You should come. We'd love
How about
to
you,
have
Griff? What are you good at?
Curling. I was disappointed I wasn't chosen for the Olympic team.
Are you the pusher or the sweeper?
I sweep. I like to sweep.
You like
You're
to
good
sweep?
at surfing too. That's
I am
something
actually
a lot of people don't know about.
Surfing will be in the 2020 Olympics, I believe, and I'm talking about I'm making fun of the Olympics because this is the story of the weekend. Setting aside all of the politics we've talked about, for which I apologize I've brought from Washington, this story of the Olympics, which Rachel is certainly a huge fan of the Olympics. We've been giving her a hard time because she hates the Olympics. But the story of the media absolutely fawning and just glamorizing the visit by the, as the AP says, youthful political princess Kim Jong-un, the brutal dictator of the Hermit Kingdom, his little sister showing up and sitting and smiling, and now she has essentially solved the entire problem on the Korean
Peninsula. Give her a Peace Prize right now. That's her on your screen. Her name is Kim Yo-jong. If you haven't been following the news, then you don't know who she is, but otherwise you would. And you'd have, based on the so-called mainstream media, a fawning impression of who she is. Here's some headlines of how they have characterized her. So her brother let her out of jail and let her go to South Korea, and they're saying this: Kim Jong-un's sister is stealing the show at the Winter Olympics. Get this one from the Washington Post, formerly reputable. The Ivanka Trump of North Korea captivates people in the South at the Olympics. And Yahoo says, all swagger and smiles, Kim Jong-un's mysterious sister gets her star turn at the Winter Olympics.
And,
Rachel?
that Washington Post headline, I don't think that's coincidental. I mean, putting North Korea's the sister of the North Korean dictator next to the name Ivanka, because as you know, the media has been comparing our president to the North Korean dictator, despite the fact that dictators consolidate power. I think this entire last year has been about deregulating and undoing all the control that Obama had centralized in Washington D.C. It's a very bizarre. Oh, and by the way, also giving money back to the people in tax reform.
Yeah,
but,
Ivanka's complicit in those tax cuts.
But what they're doing with this is they're normalizing North Korea, and it's really curious. I think a lot of people are upset. In fact, South Koreans are upset about this. There's some protesters. I think we have footage of that.
Absolutely. So it's not all hugs and kisses and rainbows between the North and the South. We saw them walk underneath the same flag. And some have, even a Republican representative of the IOC has suggested maybe some of those North and South Koreans should get a Peace Prize for merely walking together. But a lot of citizens of South Korea are saying, hey, by cutting a deal with the North, you're cutting a deal with the devil. And they're protesting that and saying, hey, they're starving in the North. It's political oppression. Don't glamorize or glorify this sister or the regime.
Well, we had Governor Mike Huckabee on the show a little earlier, and he helped put into perspective that, look, this North Korean regime still threatens world peace. Take a listen.
It's the narrative the media must want to paint, but look, The little sister of little Kim still comes from a country where most of the people are starving to death, where repression is extraordinary, and where they kill visitors like they did with the gentleman Warmbier. I mean, that's the sad thing. They haven't changed their ways. They're still an incredibly dangerous country that threatens the peace of the world. And having, the sister show up and pretend that she's all fun and games doesn't change a thing in North Korea.
So, here's the problem with this story and my colleagues in the media, and that is that with the glamorizing, and I know it feels good, but they're essentially giving her credit for setting the groundwork for some sort of historical summit after more than 60 years between North and South Korea. And it's just irresponsible, I think, for my colleagues to write things like a youthful political princess when there are political prisoners being tortured and starved in their prisons and across that country.
And thank you to Vice President Pence for bringing in Otto Warmbier's parents. He was killed by the dictatorship, and bringing attention to the repression, the cruelty. I mean, people are eating dirt there. It is they're being tortured by the thousands in these gulags that they have. It's really quite astounding that the media wouldn't draw attention to that.
Of course, because the media hates Trump and they hate his approach to what's happened there. So they write these headlines to try to make him look bad, like he's a warmonger and somehow she's a peacemaker because he talks about Little Rocket Man and Fire and Fury. He's taking seriously the fact that we are being blackmailed by a backwards regime that kills its own people because they want nukes that can hit our shores like an EMP or whatever. Serious implications. He takes it seriously. He talks about it, military exercises. They say he wants to set the world on fire. And so they find any reason to glorify the sister of the dictator who I hope she defects. Well, if she's really a peacemaker, she would defect to the South to tell the truth about the North.
And then we could give her the Nobel Peace Prize.
Exactly.
Listen, the president's going to be beaten up for more than just this, and that is DACA. When I go back to Washington, front and center, the issue of DACA is going to come up. Paul Ryan saying that he hopes to do something. But here is the president's tweet about that. We're going to put it up for you yesterday. Republicans want to fix DACA far more than the Democrats do. The Dems had all three branches of government back in 2008, 2011, and they decided not to do anything about DACA. They only want to use it as a campaign issue. Vote Republican.
So yesterday, we had a really fascinating interview with a young dreamer. He was brought here as a one-year-old child. His name is Hilario Yanez, and he has 2 degrees now. He works for a Fortune 500 company, and he's extremely grateful to Donald Trump for this deal and not so happy with the Dems. Let's take a look at this.
Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer really have no clear message, we have been confused. I think at the end of the day, they've been using us as pawns. The second point that I want to bring is that they should have never shut down the government over DACA. We should have never held our American people and our military hostage. There's plenty of time on the table to fix this. March 5th is the deadline, and you can see Republicans already willing to do something about it as we speak. At the end of the day, you're looking at a president that's all about results. I think he needs to meet Democrats in the middle, and he's bringing this pathway to citizenship so that we can actually finally get something done, immigration reform.
Hilario was fantastic, and I think has an amazing perspective on this country. But let's not mistake it. Not every dreamer, so-called dreamer, is Hilario, and not every voter that voted for President Trump had an expectation he wasn't going to advance amnesty. So there's still a very big tightrope for him to walk as he seeks the wall and an end to chain migration in exchange for some form of legalization. Citizenship is still not what a lot of conservatives want. But you hear a voice like that, it's very compelling if someone is so grateful and loves this country so much and was brought here not of their own volition. You certainly understand that story. So that's what makes the debate coming forward so complicated and difficult.
It is a very complicated and difficult case. And was really compelling to me about Hilario was he was not an entitled dreamer. He was one who was so grateful to the president, grateful to this country. He said, make me a citizen. I'll never kneel during the national anthem. I get goosebumps when I hear it. So I think what he did for me when I saw it was really draw into stark contrast who wants to help the dreamers and who's all talk. Who thinks the resistance trumps helping the dreamers. And that I think, if you haven't seen the interview, go to foxnews.com. It's really
And
great.
what I loved about Alaro, he said we need to fix the problem, too. He said, build the
all about
wall.
border security.
Build the wall, build
Yes.
the wall, end chain migration. The visa lottery system does not make sense. You know, he's common sense about it. I think if you can get that exchange, the question is, will Democrats ever come to the table in good faith? He doesn't think they will.
We'll see now, because the budget is off the table, and when we talk about immigration, it's just going to be, are you for an immigration deal that will fix DACA and fix the border, or not?
Yeah.
But
and
they
so
were
it
not.
comes down
They
to that.
were not willing to negotiate. They were not willing to come to the table, which was the issue of where the immigration debate ended. Now we'll find out. Maybe they should invite Ilario to come to Washington to try and bring them together at the table.
Maybe.
Not a bad idea. Well, we got to turn to our headlines right now, starting with a Fox News alert. Russian media reporting a passenger plane crashed in the suburbs of Moscow just moments ago. The Saratov Airlines flight carrying as many as 71 people, including 65 passengers and 6 crew members, all expected to be dead. The plane crashing shortly after takeoff from a Moscow airport. Russian media saying pieces of the plane have been found. A security scare overnight at LAX airport. A shirtless man temporarily shutting down runways after scaling a fence and running up to a Southwest plane, preparing for takeoff, then stealing a fire extinguisher out of its wheel well. Police arresting the unidentified man, who may have been mentally ill. The airport now back to normal operations. Loved ones gathering to remember philanthropist, innovator, and the grandfather of our own Abby Huntsman, John Huntsman Sr. Abby's father, John, giving this emotional eulogy.
Today, it kind of feels like a part of Utah died with him. A beautiful part of the state, all of a sudden, seems gone. Today, we bury a body, but we unleash a legacy.
Following the funeral, Abby shared this beautiful image, a final balloon send-off from the Huntsman's grandkids. John Huntsman was senior, was 80 years old. And those are your headlines up. Very sad, but
God bless him, and we're thinking of you, Abby, and the entire Huntsman family.
Hearts go out to
if you
her.
know Abby, you know she comes from an amazing family, and boy.
And we thank him for the contributions of the Huntsman family to this country.
Absolutely.
All right, President Trump delaying the release of the Democrats' FISA rebuttal memo. Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe has seen it. He says what's most important is what's not in it. He joins us next.
Plus, a bittersweet night for a Gold Star daughter. Her Army Sergeant dad died in a training accident last year, so a National Guardsman stepped up and took the girl to her first father-daughter dance in his place. Both of them are joining us live coming up. President Trump delaying the release of the Democrats' FISA rebuttal memo, requesting it be revised due, of course, to national security concerns. GOP Congressman John Ratcliffe has seen the Democrats' memo, along with all of its underlying sources, including the FISA applications. He joins us now to weigh in. Congressman, thanks for being here. So, was it a smart move based on national security for this White House to say, let's be careful about this Democratic memo and make sure it doesn't violate any national security concerns?
It was. The White House is just following the advice of the Department of Justice and the FBI. When the president sent back the letter to the House Intelligence Committee saying that there need to be redactions for sources and methods, national security concerns, and law enforcement concerns, those were coming from the Department of Justice and the FBI, who identified dozens of those concerns.
So, Congressman, you've seen not only the Democratic memo, but also the underlying source documents for the FISA applications that are at issue here. When this memo is released, redacted or otherwise, will it contradict what the Republicans, Devin Nunes, put out in their memo?
It won't. In fact, it'll confirm the most important points. To understand what's in the Democratic response memo, you have to understand what's not in it. And what's not in it is a representation that the FISA court was ever told that Hillary Clinton paid for the dossier that was used to spy on a Trump campaign associate. They weren't told that Christopher Steele was desperate and passionate about preventing Donald Trump from becoming president. And the FISA court also wasn't told that that same Christopher Steele had a personal relationship with the #4 lawyer at the Department of Justice, Bruce Orr, and his wife, Nellie Orr, who did the research for the dossier at Fusion GPS. Those are all facts that should have been disclosed to the FISA court and never were. So the Democratic memo can't contend that. Instead, what it does say is that, well, the court was told about politically motivated actors, and they were directed to footnotes that had very convoluted explanations about funding sources. And the Democrats argue that the court should have been able to put this puzzle together. But that really reflects that they don't understand what the obligation is for an officer of the court before a FISA proceeding, an ex parte proceeding, which is for full disclosure. The court's not supposed to have to figure it out. They are to be expressly told before you try and take away someone's civil liberties.
So the hypocrisy of the left, every time they're exposed, there's a new explanation. The new explanation now is that Christopher Steele is a rogue agent. He was just doing his own thing with no direction from anyone else. Based on what you've seen, was there collusion and coordination with Democrats and Christopher Steele, or was he going rogue?
Well, we know that the FBI and the Department of Justice ultimately did terminate the relationship with Christopher Steele because he wouldn't follow the rules and the guidelines with respect to providing them with information. We've, of course, subsequently learned that there are Democrats that have tried to coordinate with Christopher Steele. And so, you know, I don't know the details of the Democratic efforts to get in touch with him, but we do know that Christopher Steele was not a reliable source, and as a result, he provided an unverified dossier that the court relied upon to issue a warrant to spy on an American citizen.
We know that spying occurred, Congressman, briefly. We only have about 15 seconds. Is this the beginning of this scandal, or are we at the end? Where are we on the timeline of the exposure of this?
You know, unfortunately, Chris, much more, Pete, unfortunately, much more to come. I've had the chance to see all of the underlying documents. When the Inspector General report comes out, it's going to identify some more anomalies and things that have happened at the Department of Justice and the FBI that unfortunately are going to make this story continue for some time.
That's an important reminder. The Inspector General's report still due out from the Department of Justice. A lot of what we've learned so far has come from that as well. Representative John Ratcliffe, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Pete, good to be with you. Thanks.
You got it. All right, well, a bittersweet night for a Gold Star daughter. Her Army Sergeant dad died in a training accident last year, so a National Guardsman stepped up and took the girl to her first father-daughter dance in his place. We promise you now, both of them. Join us live next.
And I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long.
This is a Fox News alert. A tour of the Grand Canyon turns deadly when a chopper crashes 600 feet to the ground, killing 3 people. Crews still rescuing 4 survivors, treating them on the scene, blaming rough terrain and strong winds from airlifting them to a nearby hospital. 7 people, including the pilot on board, taking off from Las Vegas. It's unclear what caused the fiery crash. And a car flips and flies into a building, injuring 5 people. Incredible video coming out of Oklahoma. The driver blaming a mechanical issue with the car, causing it to catch air off the curb. Despite how bad it looks, the 5 people suffered only minor injuries. Rachel?
Thank you, Griff. 5-year-old Kaylee lost her Army Sergeant dad in a training accident last year. Described as Daddy's little girl, Kaylee's dad, Sergeant Terrence Hinton, was never able to take her to a father-daughter dance. But when her school held the dance last week, Kaylee didn't have to go alone. An Illinois Army National Guard soldier stepped up to escort her, and they danced the night away. And joining us now to tell us all about it is First Sergeant Joseph Eric Bierbrot with the Illinois National Guard, and 5-year-old Kaylee Hinton. Welcome to you both. Thank you for being here. I'm going to start with you, Sergeant. How did you find out that Kaylee needed a date to the father-daughter dance?
A request was made probably 3 weeks ago through my chain of command, and as soon as it came out, I'd seen the request and responded immediately. I've got 2 daughters of my own, and I felt that this was definitely something that needed to be done. They chose our unit based on our location to where she lives.
Kaylee, can you hear me? Okay, Kaylee, I remember my first father-daughter dance. What was your favorite part about this dance?
Dancing.
Dancing? And how did Sergeant Beerbrodt ask you out to this dance? Did he send you something to ask you?
Yes.
What was it?
It's a big dog.
He sent a giant dog, a stuffed animal dog. Wow, look at that. And I understand that you guys rode in a limo as well? Yes, and you were wearing you looked like a princess at that dance. Did you feel like a princess? Look at that. That's amazing. And I understand that your brother, Christian, he's 15 years old, he's sort of stepped up in this situation. He opened the door for Sergeant Beerbrodt, is that right?
Yes.
Sergeant Beerbrodt?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Tell us a little bit
He was
about
there
Kaylee's
all the
dad.
He was a sergeant in the Army. He was stationed in Hawaii. Last year on Mother's Day, there was an accident in which he lost his life.
Wow. Difficult. Well, listen, we're really proud of what the military has done, has really come together as a family in this case. I know that Kaylee's mom said that Kaylee's a daddy's little girl. I think when we all saw that video of her dancing on your polished military shoes, we all felt like she was America's little girl in that moment. Thank you so much. One last question for you, Sergeant. Will there be a second father-daughter date? Will you be asking her out again?
Absolutely. If she would go with me, I would go with her in a heartbeat. She is a beautiful little princess.
Why is it so important to honor our heroes in these situations?
Because Gold Star families, we have to honor and care for the families, and we never forget their sacrifices. And as a military member, I view all military as a family, no matter what branch and service they're in.
Well, Kaylee, you are a beautiful little girl. You are a princess to all of us. Thank you for joining us, both of you. Look, it's a little, and she's yawning. It's a little tired. It's a little early in the morning. Thank you both for sharing this moment with us, and all the best to you both. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Do you remember this teacher's disgusting anti-military rant?
Think about the people who you know over there. Your freaking stupid Uncle Louie or whatever. They're dumb. They're not like high-level thinkers. They're not academic people. They're not intellectual people. They're the freaking lowest of our low.
Well, we've got a big update on the student who recorded that, and he's going to be joining us live coming up.
We are back with a Fox News alert. 2 police officers shot and killed yesterday, Saturday, while responding to a domestic emergency call in Ohio. Law enforcement has seen a deadly start to 2018, with 9 U.S. cops dying in the line of duty so far this year.
Fox News contributor Ed Davis is the former chief of police for Boston. He joins us now. Chief, first, what do you say about this latest shooting in Ohio?
Well, good morning. Our hearts go out to the families that are left in the wake of this ambush. It was a coward that attacked these 2 men who were responding to a very routine type of call, one they respond to multiple times a day. So this is very, very troubling.
Keith, what do you think is happening in the culture that might be affecting these kinds of stories?
Well, I think the constant drumbeat of negative press against police plays a role here. I think that we've been vilified over the past few years. We certainly have things that we need to correct. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on policing, but the truth of the matter is there are good men and women who are out there every night protecting their fellow citizens. And when you see 2 of them sacrificed like this, it's just horrible.
Commissioner Davis, I have to ask, we had the high-profile, Black Lives Matter movement, the conversation, fry them like bacon, all the things that have gone on in our culture. What adjustments have been made, if any, I'm sure there have been, within police departments, and have any accounted for any of these unfortunate situations we've seen?
Well, unfortunately, when you have this type of mentality out there and you see officer deaths start to go up, the officers respond in kind. They have to protect themselves. So I'll bet every police officer in Ohio is going to be responding to domestic calls very differently today than they did yesterday. So it does raise the ante, and it's just so unfortunate to have something like this happen.
Is it hurting recruitment?
Some colleagues have said that it is, that it's very difficult, especially to recruit officers of color into policing right now, and that we lose on both sides when that occurs. But there are other departments like the NYPD. Commissioner O'Neill recently I talked to, and he said he had no trouble recruiting. So it depends on where you are in the country.
Chief, very quickly, we're almost out of time, but is it your opinion that there's a mentality out there that it's okay to harm cops?
Oh, there certainly is among some people. If you look on the internet or you look at some of the rhetoric that we have coming out of not only extremists, zealots on one side of this, but also responsible spokespeople who are angry for one reason or another. We have to team back a little bit and understand that that 99% of the officers out there are working really hard to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief Davis. Thanks for joining us. And well, we want to put up on our page now that GoFundMe page. You can go there to GoFundMe.com, FOP Lodge 9 Help Fund for the families of Officers Morelli and Juring that were so tragically killed yesterday. Chief, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you got it.
Now, to a breaking story we're following this morning out of Russia, where a passenger plane has crashed southeast of Moscow. 71 people on board, all feared dead. The plane crashed shortly after taking off from a Moscow airport. Russian media saying pieces of the plane have been found. The White House standing firm behind Israel's right to defend itself after carrying out its largest strikes on Syria in decades. It all started when an Israeli helicopter took out an Iranian drone launched from Syria, saying it was there in their airspace. An Israeli jet then shot down, leading to more attacks on Syrian targets. Mike Huckabee, who is in Israel right now, says they are in the right.
What the Israelis did yesterday honestly will bring a calm, most likely, to the Golan Heights and to this country for the next several days. And it was very important that both the White House and the State Department issued strong statements of support for Israel.
The U.S. is blaming Iran and its allies, saying they need to work towards peace. A bill to ban youth tackle football in Maryland can't get off the line of scrimmage. A state senator reconsidering sponsoring the bill while coaches are publicly voicing their disapproval. The measure would forbid tackle football and hitting a soccer ball with your head on public fields until high school. Along with banning lacrosse and hockey checks, this comes amid growing concerns over the lasting effects of head injuries. Those are your headlines. I know you're not a fan of that, Bill.
I think we should just make everyone wear helmets all day long. You know, just in case you get hit, just in case you fall. Very safe. Everyone's okay.
What is the thing
It's
with
ridiculous.
soccer? Like, I played soccer in high school, and
Because if you hit it with the head, they think you're going to hit the ball with your head.
Wasn't the point if you don't want to get hurt, then you play soccer?
It's part of how you play the game. You
Come on,
score
football,
goals with your
people.
head.
This is America. Let your kids play some football, learn how to tackle, learn how to hit. It's going to be okay.
Rick scores goals with his head
Rick.
when he's covering the weather.
How you doing?
Aren't our skulls strong enough to handle a soccer ball?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the common sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Put a helmet on.
That's because it's all inside the hard skull, the thick skull that I have. All right, guys, let's talk a little bit of weather. We do have a lot going on right now. In fact, a really active week across parts of the west eventually coming up, which is great news. Take a look at the maps. I'm going to show you what's going on. First of all, it's cold up across parts of the north. It's really warm down across the southeast. Overall, that is going to be our trend for much of the coming, say, week, even 2 weeks. That'll be kind of the dominant factor that we're watching on. You'll also notice here a lot of drought building in across much of the country. You notice parts parts of the east and parts of the west. Parts of the central area of the country not going to get any rain, but right now we had big rain last night, throughout the day today, and all the way till tomorrow. Some severe weather down across the southeast. Watch for that, and some flooding conditions potentially, especially around parts of the mid-Atlantic. This is how this is going to play out throughout the rest of the day in towards tomorrow. You'll notice it's still with us for quite a bit of time. And real quickly, I want to just move out across parts of the west. We have not been able to get any rain in towards Southern California and the southwest. And watch what begins to happen here tomorrow. We're going to have a bit of a rainy week across parts of Southern California and in towards the Four Corners. We desperately need it. All right, guys, back to you inside.
Rain's coming
Thanks,
down.
Rick. You can just hear the rain just pounding.
Yeah, we can hear it from here.
Where Rick's doing that. All right. Still ahead, Philadelphia now fighting the growing opioid crisis by, get this, legalizing a safe space to take drugs. Is that a good idea?
Come here, kids. Take drugs over here.
We discuss that coming up next.
Idiots. Plus, the media gushing over Kim Jong-un's sister at the Winter Olympics. Why are they glamorizing the rogue nation? We're going to ask that question and